You're sitting in the weekly department meeting, and for the third time this month, your colleague is clicking through a slide deck that is, let's just be real, a complete mess. The numbers are scattered all over the place, the core point is totally lost, and you can literally see everyone in the room checking out. Now, another coworker of yours has finally had enough. They genuinely want to help this person improve, but they've been putting it off because they're terrified of offending them. Finally, the frustration just boils over. Right after the meeting ends, they pull the colleague aside in the hallway and blurt out a single sentence.
Your presentations are always confusing. It just hangs there in the air. The coworker who said it instantly feels this pang of regret about their delivery, but they figure, hey, it's the truth, right? They're just being direct. They're ripping off the Band-Aid with the genuine intent to help the team out. But let's look at what actually happens next. The colleague's face tightens up. Their arms immediately cross. Instead of an open, productive conversation about improving slide structures, this invisible wall of immediate defensiveness just slams down. The stark contrast here is incredible. We might have an intention that is purely to help, to elevate the team's communication, but the result? Total disaster. We've got a damaged relationship, a bruised ego, and let's be honest here, there's going to be absolutely zero improvement on their next presentation because they are way too busy feeling attacked. So how can feedback intended to help someone end up making things worse? Why do our best intentions in workplace communication so often just completely fail when we try to deliver constructive criticism? Well, the answer lies in the mechanics of how we deliver the message. Giving corrective feedback is actually a profound sign of respect. It shows you believe the other person can perform better. But when it's delivered poorly, the human brain doesn't process it as help, it processes it as a literal threat. Okay, let's dive into this. To decode the psychology of constructive criticism, we're going to look at 5 practical principles. If you follow these, you can deliver the toughest feedback without ever triggering that defensive wall. They are: address the behavior, not the person; be specific about what happened; explain the impact; make the feedback useful; and keep the conversation respectful and two-way. Let's break these down one by one and see how they can completely transform our interactions. Principle number 1. Address the behavior, not the person. Look, human beings are hardwired to protect their identities. When you say something that attacks who they are, like calling them confusing, lazy, or disorganized, their brain instantly interprets it as a personal attack. Defensiveness isn't them being difficult, it's just a natural survival reflex. So to bypass this reflex, your feedback has to remain completely objective. You're addressing the specific actions that were taken, entirely separating the action from who the person actually is. Which leads right into principle 2. Be specific about what happened. Vague statements give the brain way too much room to assume the worst. And whatever you do, you have to avoid exaggerations like always or never. Saying your presentations are always confusing completely tanks your credibility. Why? Because all the recipient has to do is think of one single time they weren't confusing, and suddenly, boom, they've dismissed your entire critique. You must pinpoint the exact, singular event so there's zero room for debate about reality. Principle 3 is where the real mindset shift happens. Explain the impact. Once you've objectively stated what happened, you need to connect that behavior to a tangible business outcome. This shifts the focus away from it just being your personal annoyance and anchors it to the broader perspective of the team's shared goals. You're not saying this annoyed me, you're explaining exactly how an action affected the project, the client, or the team's overall efficiency. Principle 4, make the feedback useful. It is incredibly easy to criticize. It takes almost zero effort to point out a flaw, right? But true professional behavior requires stepping up and suggesting actionable alternatives. You've got to focus on changes the recipient can actually make. Helping them comprehend what could be done differently in the future is vastly more important than simply rehashing what went wrong in the past. If you don't offer a path forward, honestly, it's just complaining. And finally, principle 5, keep the conversation respectful and two-way. Feedback should never be a one-way lecture. It must be a dialogue. This means engaging in active listening and entering the conversation assuming the other person is actually doing their very best. Maybe they were given terrible data, or maybe they just didn't have enough time to prepare. By maintaining mutual trust and staying genuinely curious, you invite them to share their side, which keeps the whole environment safe and collaborative. And this brilliantly illustrates how we can synthesize all 5 of these principles into a visual, easy-to-follow, step-by-step framework. Look at how logically this sequence flows. We start with an observation, followed by the impact, then a suggestion, which opens up a discussion, ultimately leading to true improvement. This sequence right here, that's your mental checklist every single time you need to give constructive criticism. Let's actually apply this exact framework to fix our original disastrous workplace story. Instead of blurting out a judgment, we start with a pure objective observation. When you presented the survey results this morning, notice what's missing there? There is no judgment, no exaggeration, and absolutely no personal attack. We've completely removed all personal emotion from the opening statement and just pinpointed a specific, undeniable event that both people know just happened. So the crucial point is how we follow up that observation. We immediately pivot to a helpful, forward-looking suggestion. We say, starting with the conclusion would have made the message easier to follow. This is genius because it combines the impact, making the message easier to follow, with a highly actionable suggestion, starting with the conclusion. You aren't just leaving your colleagues stuck with the problem, you're handing them a tangible solution they can literally use tomorrow. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is comparing these two approaches side by side. The first one attacks the person, it relies on vague exaggeration, it offers absolutely no solution, and it guarantees defensiveness. But look at the second approach. When you presented the survey results this morning, starting with the conclusion would have made the message easier to follow. It is night and day. The second version is objective, it's specific, and it's entirely focused on helping the person succeed in the future.
Let's move to and see how this builds into our final phase. By opening the conversation with an objective observation and actionable advice, you naturally transition right into a discussion. Because you haven't attacked them, they're open to talking. You might follow up by asking something like, "What do you think about trying that format next week?" This exact phrasing completely prevents conflict. It lowers their shield. Instead of feeling criticized, the recipient feels supported, which invites true collaboration and actual lasting improvement.
The next time you feel the urge to criticize a colleague, I want you to pause. Just take a breath and ask yourself if you're merely venting your own frustration or if you're genuinely building a bridge to better performance. Every single critique is a choice between tearing someone down or coaching them up. Is your feedback helping?